Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Sharath Krishnaswamy. I'm a neuroanesthetist and a healthcare communicator. So let me start off with my first episode of the Science of Medicine, and I shall talk about the ethics of relational AI. We know that AI has been around and we don't know to what extent it can influence the practice of medicine. And I happened to come across this paper, which is called The Ethics of the Relational AI, written by Ida and Christine Cassel, and this was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. So these researchers and professors initially figured out that the November 2022 was when the public first had an experience with artificial AI, as well as ChatGPT, which used a large language model. Now, using this large language model, we can go ahead and find out how it influences the practice of medicine, or how we can talk about the possibility of AI replacing doctors. So I did a little bit of reading and I wanted to know what relational AI was all about. So this definition states that it is a system that integrates graph analytics, business rules, optimization, and AI workloads into data clouds. So basically, once you have a lot of patient data, you have a method to assess the data, analyze them, to optimize them, and to deal with large volumes of data coming from different sources, and using all of this data to intelligently develop an app. So moving to what the Belmont report is all about. So this is a report which basically decided to establish ethical principles for research involving humans. Because either way, when the doctors use an AI app or when the patients approach an application which uses AI, there has to be a beneficence, there has to be respect for persons, and there has to be justice. So these people decided to see how these principles apply to clinical care. So the Belmont report was written by the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research. It is interesting because we as scientists, researchers, and doctors, we initially have to do experiments on animals. And to put us in a different light, it is to say that we just might be experiments in a grander scheme of things where the machines will try and assess how well we perform our jobs as clinicians, or how well we manage patients' data when they are fed into a machine. So it basically has about 4 tenets. The first of which, there are boundaries between the biomedical and behavioral research and the routine and accepted practice of medicine. And while treating the patients, or while dealing with research involving human subjects, they assess the risk and benefit criteria of using AI while dealing with human subjects. And even while feeding the machine with data sets, so what kind of examples, or what pool of information are they taking from the human subjects? So they believe in framing appropriate guidelines for the same, and to what extent consent is involved in various research settings. Now, why is this important? It is because the physicians and clinicians are always held responsible for holding these principles in order to do good for the patient. According to even Hippocrates' oath, which mentions about do no harm and to first try and do as much good to the patient. So now while we use artificial intelligence, whether it be text or speech or images and videos also, these may sometimes be interposed between the clinicians and the patients. And there are some times when the clinicians themselves are subjected to the artificial intelligence. And so the clinician deserves some respect and justice to what is being done to him by a machine. Now, for example, let's say a generational AI has drafted patient portal messages, or it creates summaries for trainees. And let's say there can be conversational interfaces for patients to learn about their diagnosis and to consider treatment choices. And it can speak to the patients in their own language, in their own literacy and educative levels. And there are certain ChatGPT interfaces which allow patients to self-diagnose and access treatment advice. So there are a number of concerns regarding all of this, and there are about three concerns that I will cover in this presentation. So there are calls for AI to be appropriate, and they have to be valid and safe, and it should fall under the Belmont principle of beneficence. So the thing about large learning models is, like any other machine or like any other program, it has an inherent risk of harm. It may be intentional or it may not be intentional, because it is the manner in which it generates results or the manner in which it assesses the data that is being fed to it. And that's how they generate content. So errors can happen due to biased or erroneous training data and from deliberate misuse, because there is this concept which is called garbage in, garbage out. You don't give it relevant, important data, it is going to give you irrelevant data, and it will incorrectly assess and treat a patient if it is allowed to treat a patient. So, and since it is a machine, for example, it can drift or deteriorate as soon as it is deployed. For example, let's say I prescribe a particular medicine to you, a particular tablet to you. The chemical constitution of the tablet will last as long as the expiry date reaches. So it will affect the right kind of response on the patient because it is a chemical composition. Whereas an AI, it can change as it progresses while treating the patient or the group of patients or a community. So this may be because of updates, just like Windows had an update, just like any other software has frequent updates, which may be planned or unplanned because of the change in the statistical data that is being fed to it. For example, when COVID had a symptom known as anosmia in 2020, it was considered a very big symptom and a diagnostic criteria for somebody who has COVID. Let's say for somebody who has COVID right now, 2024, it is a lot rare for the person to have anosmia now as compared to before. So this amount of data being fed into the program changes along with time. So what the Coalition for Health in the United States has brought up or wishes to work upon is basically a private and a public partnership involving the academia, technology, the companies, and the government. And they've developed a national network of health AI assured laboratories to see the safety and effectiveness of AI in centralized settings using representative data sets. So basically, they feed an amount of data to the machine, to the AI, and we see whether the AI is evaluating this data and processing it in a safe manner and whether it is effective. And why is it necessary for this generational AI to be appropriate? Because as we know, it is a machine, and certain machines pursue goal-oriented behavior, which may not always align with medicine's moral tenets. Let's say, for example, this generational AI might convince clinicians to provide a treatment on a particular method that will benefit the payers rather than the patients. So the payers here, you might ask, what constitutes the payers? It could probably be the industry, the pharmaceutical industry. It could be the the program itself, the kind of business model of the program or the business interest of the program, instead of actually benefiting the patient itself. Now, most health AI guidance documents feature transparency. So basically, why is transparency important? According to the US Department of Health and Human Services, they distinguish three types of transparency. So basically, when all of this patient data is being fed, we identify how this patient data is being used and how the AI systems are using the decision making, and how it allows regulators or other overseers access to the AI algorithms themselves. Because ultimately it is an algorithm, and somebody who has access to the algorithm can edit it or change it and effectively change the treatment method of a patient if a doctor with a conscience is not involved. Now, coming to the clinicians, they are respected as persons because a lot of years, a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of money goes into making a clinician or a doctor who he is in any part of the world. So these clinicians, we deserve transparency, and it we should have a right to refuse the ways in which data in their practice is being used for AI model building. So, and they should also have a say in a basis in which the AI systems determine treatment recommendations. And there's also a risk of AI generated avatars which may impersonate clinicians during their interactions with the patients. So this is very important because of the presence of deepfakes, as you all know. And there might be a point of time where you will not be able to differentiate a deepfake from a real doctor giving you valuable advice. Now, moving to the HHS FAVES principle, it is an expression of justice and emphasizes on fairness. So they believe that AI benefits should be distributed equitably across populations and individuals. And the way to enhance the fairness is to use representative data sets. It is used also to include data on factors such as determinants of health, to identify biases in the system, and to be transparent and explicit about the AI system's goals. So now that we know that fairness is important when dealing with data and dealing with the method of treating a patient using AI, the algorithmic fairness is just one contributor of the overall fairness of the AI system. So let's say the algorithm has been trained to be theoretically fair, but it can be unfair in practice because it might be used for certain clinicians only to some group of patients. Now, moving on to emphasizing more on fairness and equity, generational AI has the capacity to improve the skills and efficiency of healthcare workers. Now, this has a possibility to eliminate the need of whole classes of workers. Now, when this happens, this gains that the machine has over a human clinician, will these gains be distributed fairly? And now, when this amount of data has been fed into the AI machine and a large amount of profits has been gained by the machine, so will these profits be shared with the patients and the clinicians who contributed that data? This is quite an important aspect because I had a friend who was a dermatologist, and I was told that let's say we employ a machine to help run our procedures better and to run our OPDs better and treat our patients better. All of the data that we are submitting to it is going to be acted upon by a program and will benefit another industry instead of benefiting us as conscientious doctors. So in the United States, especially what these authors are talking about is they are calling for a creation of a national network of proactive health AI ethics centers. So they want to develop foundational methods and create and maintain living guidelines to coordinate development, testing, and evaluation of implemental strategies, which is beyond the institutional review boards. So we have institutional review boards at every medical institution, medical college, and hospital, which assesses how whether any study that we are being done conforms to ethical guidelines. So this will need a higher board to evaluate the function and the use of AI on human models. And the thing is, the moment you implement certain ethics, it is a constantly evolving thing. So there has to be a regulatory, a monitoring authority to monitor all of this and to identify and share the best practices. So this is a complex field because it involves a number of other sciences, which is the bioethics, the human factors engineering, implemental science, philosophy, and law. So this is what the authors are suggesting. Now, to try and compare the regulatory guidelines of the various other countries is European Union's AI Act, which was enacted in December 2023. They have established a federal level regulatory power backed by law over AI. Okay. And in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration and the other state and federal agencies, the Coalition for Health AI, they are developing a regulatory regime for health AI safety and performance. So when we talk about health AI, the amount of effects it can have on human society is not as much, I mean, is no different from the new medical devices being introduced into society or into clinical practice, or new pharmaceutical products introduced into clinical practice. So to summarize what this paper was all about was, it is important in this era of the 21st century that a separate authority is needed to ensure that health AI adheres to the principles of beneficence, respect for persons, and justice. So all of this requires a different type of expertise and accountability. And I think this is quite applicable in our scenario where we see AI in every sphere of our practice and in the world. Thank you.